Having this is very dangerous, not because it's inherently evil or toxic, but because it blinds you. It clouds your judgment. It anchors you in a place where you stop questioning, stop growing. When you possess it, you begin to believe you are invincible, immune to mistakes, immune to lessons. And that's where the real danger lies. This thing, call it pride, power, certainty, or comfort, it seduces you with the illusion of control. You clutch it tightly, fearing that if you let go, everything will crumble. But what you don't see is how it's quietly rotting your roots, how it feeds your fears more than your hopes, how it isolates you from reality because you only want to hear what supports it, not what challenges it. Having this is dangerous because it makes you forget the fragility of your own existence. It turns wisdom into stubbornness, humility into arrogance. It builds walls where bridges should be. And worst of all, it kills the very thing you claim to protect, your freedom. You think you hold the key, but the key is a chain. You believe it's your shield, but it's actually your prison. And you can't escape until you recognize that the real power comes not from holding on, but from knowing when to let go. When you have this, whatever this may be, one of the most dangerous traps you fall into is the illusion of invincibility. It's not a small trap, it's a massive one that swallows entire lives whole, leaving only the husk of what could have been. This illusion is a master deceiver because it convinces you that you are beyond harm, beyond failure, beyond the natural laws that govern growth and survival. It makes you believe that you are untouchable, and with that belief comes a paralysis of the mind and spirit that stops you from evolving. At first, the feeling of invincibility is intoxicating. It's a rush, a surge of power, a high that clouds your vision with confidence so bright it blinds you. It's the rush you feel when everything seems to be going your way, when you're winning and everyone else appears to be falling behind. But that's where the danger is hiding, inside that euphoric high, quietly whispering that you no longer need to be cautious, no longer need to reflect, no longer need to listen. You forget that every person, no matter how strong, smart, or talented, has vulnerabilities. You start to believe you're exempt from mistakes because you think you've learned enough, achieved enough, or gained enough influence. This is the moment when the illusion takes root. It convinces you that you have mastered the game of life, that your decisions are flawless, and that your path is certain and unbreakable. But this is exactly the moment when you become most fragile. The illusion of invincibility breeds complacency. You stop questioning your choices. You stop seeking advice. You dismiss warnings as irrelevant or the product of jealousy. When you start to believe you are untouchable, the mirror stops reflecting your flaws and your blind spots. Instead, it shows a distorted image, a version of yourself that is polished, untouchable, and perfect. The danger is that this mirror becomes your only reality. What you don't realize is that life is not static. The world around you is constantly shifting, changing in ways you cannot predict. The people you rely on will change, circumstances will evolve, and new challenges will arise that your past experience doesn't prepare you for. When you operate under the illusion of invincibility, you fail to adapt. You act as though your past victories guarantee future success, but that is never the case. This illusion also isolates you. When you believe you are invincible, you don't want to show weakness. You fear vulnerability because it threatens the image you've built. Vulnerability is seen as a crack in the armor, something that must be hidden at all costs. So, instead of being open to feedback or admitting when you are wrong, you double down. You defend your choices even when they're clearly flawed. You push away anyone who questions you because their words challenge your fragile sense of invulnerability. The deeper the illusion takes hold, the more isolated you become. You're surrounded by yes men and enablers who reinforce your belief in your own perfection. Real criticism, the kind that could save you from disaster, is dismissed or ignored. This is the silence before the storm, and you don't hear it coming because you believe storms only happen to others, not to you. The illusion of invincibility also feeds your ego in dangerous ways. It convinces you that you are above failure, above pain, and above consequences. This is not arrogance born out of confidence, but arrogance born from ignorance. It is the ego's way of protecting itself from the fear of being seen as flawed or weak. But ego never prepares you for reality. It blinds you to the fact that failure is not a punishment but a teacher. It blinds you to the fact that pain is not weakness but a sign that you are alive and learning. When you are under this spell, you begin to take unnecessary risks because you believe you will come out unscathed. You push boundaries recklessly, ignoring red flags and warning signs. You think you're untouchable, so you engage in behaviors that endanger not just yourself, but those around you. This reckless confidence is the hallmark of the illusion. It's a slow march toward collapse disguised as progress. One of the most cruel ironies of this illusion is that the people who appear invincible are often the ones who fall hardest. When their bubble bursts, it does so with a force so violent, it shatters not only their world but the worlds of everyone connected to them. The fall from invincibility is always steep, and the higher the illusion, the harder the crash. Another facet of this illusion is how it distorts your relationship with time. When you believe you are invincible, you think you have endless tomorrows to fix mistakes, to change course, to grow wiser. But time is not on anyone's side. It does not wait for your awakening or your humility. It moves forward relentlessly, and every moment spent in denial is a moment lost. The illusion tricks you into postponing growth and reflection because it assures you that you are safe for now, that failure is for someone else, somewhere else. The illusion of invincibility also warps your understanding of strength. True strength is not about never falling or never failing. True strength is in resilience, in the ability to get up when you fall, to learn when you fail, and to grow when you are hurt. But when you believe you're invincible, you equate strength with perfection. You think real strength means never needing help, never showing cracks, and never admitting fault. This misunderstanding keeps you stuck, unable to embrace the full spectrum of human experience that builds genuine power. This false invincibility also limits your empathy. When you believe you are above failure or pain, you lose touch with the struggles of others. You can't see their vulnerabilities because you are blind to your own. You start to judge harshly, assuming that those who struggle simply lack willpower or discipline. This disconnection makes you colder, less compassionate, and ultimately more isolated. The illusion of invincibility is a thief that steals your humility, your growth, your connections, and your future. It cloaks itself in confidence, but it is really fear masquerading as power. Fear of failure, fear of being seen, fear of change. The moment you realize this is the moment you begin to crack the illusion and glimpse the truth. Because the truth is, no one is invincible. No one is immune to mistakes, pain, or failure. The sooner you accept this, the sooner you can move beyond the illusion and start living with authentic strength. Strength that comes from awareness, from openness, from humility, and from a willingness to face reality without masks or defenses. The illusion promises safety and certainty, but it delivers only stagnation and eventual collapse. Real safety comes from knowing your limits, embracing your vulnerabilities, and being willing to adapt and grow. Real certainty comes from the courage to face the unknown without the false comfort of invincibility. When you hold on to this illusion, you stop seeing life as a journey of learning and transformation. You become trapped in a fixed mindset, thinking you have nothing left to gain from mistakes or challenges. This mindset is the enemy of progress. It turns your potential into a prison. The most dangerous part is that you may not even realize you are under this illusion until it is too late. It hides behind your successes and your confidence, quietly eroding your foundations. Only when everything starts to crumble, do you see the cracks in the armor you thought was impenetrable. Yet, the awakening is always possible. The moment you acknowledge your vulnerabilities, your mistakes, and your limitations, the illusion begins to dissolve. You become more aware of the true nature of strength and growth. You learn to embrace uncertainty and risk without needing a false shield. It is not easy to shed the illusion. It requires courage to face your fears, humility to admit your flaws, and wisdom to seek truth over comfort. But in doing so, you reclaim your freedom. You free yourself from the chains of arrogance and denial. You open the door to genuine growth and resilience. In that space, you no longer need the illusion of invincibility. You operate from a place of grounded confidence, one built not on the false belief that you are untouchable, but on the honest understanding that you are human. That you will face failures and pain, but that you can survive and thrive through them. The illusion of invincibility is dangerous because it pretends to protect you, but it really traps you. It offers a mirage of power while secretly feeding your greatest vulnerabilities. To break free, you must be willing to look beyond the illusion and embrace the reality that true strength lies in embracing your full humanity. Blinding comfort and control. These two forces are a pair of silent tyrants that govern many lives without notice. The comfort you think you've earned, the control you believe you wield, can quickly become shackles, trapping you in a state of delusion far more dangerous than obvious hardship. This is not comfort or control in its true, healthy form. No, this is the comfort of complacency and the control of illusion, where you convince yourself that everything is fine, that you have the upper hand, and that the status quo is both safe and sufficient. At the core of this blinding comfort lies a paradox. Comfort, by nature, is meant to soothe, to provide peace and rest. But when it becomes blinding, it stops being a refuge and instead becomes a prison. This kind of comfort dulls the senses, numbs the awareness, and dulls the edge of your instinct to question, to challenge, to push forward. It seduces you with familiarity, with routine, and with predictability. You get used to a certain way of living, a certain way of thinking, and suddenly, the very comfort you crave becomes the veil that blinds you to what is unfolding outside your narrow zone of safety. Control, on the other hand, feels like power. It's that confident grip you hold on your environment, your plans, your relationships. It's the belief that if you manage things right, nothing will surprise you, nothing will harm you. But here is the catch. This control is often an illusion, a fragile construct that relies on things remaining unchanged. And in a world defined by chaos and uncertainty, control is a mirage that slips through your fingers the more you try to grasp it tightly. When comfort and control come together in this blinding way, they form a dangerous feedback loop. You seek comfort because it feels safe. You seek control to maintain that comfort. But the more control you attempt to exert, the more fragile your comfort becomes. Because real life refuses to be managed like a machine. People change, circumstances shift, and unexpected challenges arise without invitation. Yet, trapped in this loop, you refuse to see or accept that truth. Instead, you build routines and habits not for growth or joy, but to reinforce the illusion that you have everything under control. You avoid discomfort at all costs. You turn away from risk and uncertainty like they are enemies rather than opportunities. Every choice is made with the goal of preserving this fragile comfort, rather than expanding your boundaries or evolving your understanding. The blindness that comes from this comfort and control is profound because it disguises itself as wisdom. It whispers that you are smart to avoid risk, that you are responsible to keep things stable, that you are strong because you don't let chaos in. But in reality, this wisdom is fear wrapped in sophistication. It is fear of failure, fear of change, fear of the unknown masquerading as prudence. The irony is that the very comfort and control you cling to as your shield are also the source of your greatest vulnerabilities. They make you resistant to change, unprepared for crises, and disconnected from the flow of life. Instead of being a master of your fate, you become a prisoner of your own desire for certainty. This state breeds stagnation. Growth requires discomfort, evolution demands risk, but when your priority is comfort, you choose the known over the unknown every single time. You settle for less because less is safer. You hide behind the walls of your carefully constructed control, afraid to step outside and face the unpredictable. Control also breeds rigidity. When you try to micromanage every detail, you lose flexibility, the ability to bend, adapt, and respond with creativity to unexpected challenges. Life will not conform to your plans, and the more rigid you are, the more likely you are to break when confronted with forces beyond your control. The blinding effect of comfort and control also clouds your judgment about relationships and people. You start to keep only those who reinforce your sense of safety, those who don't challenge you or disrupt your routine. You avoid difficult conversations, uncomfortable truths, and real vulnerability. In doing so, you sacrifice depth and authenticity for the illusion of peace. This is how comfort and control poison connection. You end up surrounded by a carefully curated bubble, but inside that bubble, true growth, true intimacy, and true transformation cannot thrive. You mistake silence for harmony, sameness for loyalty, and avoidance for peace. The danger is that over time, this bubble becomes so fragile it can burst from the slightest pressure, revealing how shallow and brittle your foundation really is. The addiction to comfort and control also impacts your own sense of self. You begin to identify with this safe, controlled version of yourself. This persona becomes a mask you wear to hide insecurities and fears. You resist challenges not because they are impossible, but because they threaten the image you've built. Every time you deny discomfort, you deny a part of your potential. Moreover, the pursuit of control often means you push away uncertainty and unpredictability, but these are the very ingredients that foster creativity, resilience, and innovation. When you shut out the unknown, you shut out growth. You deny yourself the chance to surprise yourself, to learn, to become stronger through adversity. Comfort and control also create a false sense of permanence. You assume your situation, your mindset, and your environment will remain the same. But nothing in life is permanent. Clinging to the illusion of permanence causes shock and despair when inevitable changes arrive. The harder you hold on, the more painful the loss. This blindness is dangerous because it makes you complacent in the face of warning signs. When discomfort appears, whether through conflict, challenge, or failure, you dismiss it as an inconvenience rather than a signal. You smooth over cracks instead of repairing foundations. You patch holes instead of rebuilding structures. Over time, these ignored signs compound, eroding your stability quietly and relentlessly. Another subtle way comfort and control blind you is through distraction. When you focus too much on managing your immediate environment, you lose sight of the bigger picture. Your vision narrows, and you miss opportunities to grow, to connect, to innovate. You become trapped in survival mode, managing day-to-day, but failing to thrive or evolve. The emotional cost is significant as well. The comfort you chase may come at the price of authentic joy and passion. When your goal is to maintain control and avoid discomfort, you often suppress your deepest desires, your wildest dreams, and your genuine emotions. You trade vibrant living for muted existence. This internal cost can manifest as anxiety or dissatisfaction that you cannot quite explain. You feel stuck, restless, or disconnected, but the cause is hidden beneath layers of routine and control. You don't realize that what you really need is a little chaos, a little uncertainty, a little discomfort to shake things up and awaken your spirit. In essence, blinding comfort and control seduce you into a false paradise, a place where you feel safe but are actually trapped. This paradise is built on denial, fear, and resistance. It looks like peace on the surface, but underneath, it is a slow suffocation of potential and vitality. The tragedy is that most people do not realize they are in this trap until it is too late. They only see the consequences, missed opportunities, failed relationships, burnout, or crisis. By then, the cost has already been paid. The challenge is to recognize this pattern early, to question your own attachment to comfort and control, and to dare to embrace uncertainty and discomfort as necessary parts of growth. Letting go of the need to control everything is not weakness. It is courage. It is the wisdom to understand that life is not a machine to be managed, but a dance to be felt and experienced. It is the humility to admit you don't have all the answers and the strength to face whatever comes with open eyes and an open heart. Comfort and control are not enemies, but when they become blinding, they turn into chains. They stop you from seeing reality clearly, from adapting wisely, and from living fully. To live beyond this blindness requires breaking the cycle, stepping into the unknown, and learning to flow with life instead of trying to cage it. When you do this, you reclaim not just your freedom, but your power. The power that comes from embracing life's unpredictability, from growing through discomfort, and from trusting yourself to navigate whatever storms arise. This is the strength that outlasts the illusion of control and the false peace of blinding comfort. Wisdom and arrogance are not distant strangers. They are close relatives, separated only by the subtlety of perception and the thin line of humility. The transformation from wisdom to arrogance is a quiet, almost invisible shift that often creeps into a person's character without warning. It starts with a seed of knowledge, experience, or insight that gives rise to confidence. But confidence that goes unchecked or unbalanced can quickly turn into arrogance. This transformation is one of the most dangerous and deceptive shifts a person can undergo because it disguises itself as strength and clarity when in reality, it is a surrender to ego and blindness. True wisdom is rooted in humility. It understands the limits of what we know, the vastness of what we don't, and the perpetual need to learn and listen. Wisdom comes from experience but is always tempered by reflection and openness. It accepts mistakes as teachers, challenges as opportunities, and diversity of thought as a gift. Yet, the very wisdom that once opened your eyes can become a cage if you stop questioning it and start using it as a weapon to assert superiority. The transformation begins subtly. You accumulate knowledge or experience in a certain area, and that accumulation feels like power. It is easy to confuse power with invincibility. Once you have answers, you may start to believe that your perspective is the only valid one. The room for doubt shrinks as certainty grows, and with certainty comes the urge to assert, to dominate, to silence opposing views. Arrogance does not announce itself with trumpets and banners. It often wears the clothes of wisdom, but carries the heart of ego. It manifests as an unwillingness to admit error or uncertainty, a refusal to consider alternative viewpoints, and a sense of entitlement that your way is the best or only way. What began as a humble search for truth becomes a fortress built on pride. This fortress is dangerous because it isolates you. Wisdom invites dialogue, encourages collaboration, and thrives in community. Arrogance shuts doors and builds walls. When you become arrogant, you begin to see others not as partners in learning, but as obstacles or inferiors. This alienation cuts off the very sources of growth and insight that nurtured your wisdom in the first place. The more arrogant you become, the more you try to control the narrative. You seek validation not from truth but from status, from proving others wrong rather than understanding them. You prioritize winning arguments over gaining knowledge, appearance over substance. This shift distorts the purpose of wisdom from a pursuit of deeper understanding to a tool for self-aggrandizement. In this transformation, humility, the essential companion of wisdom, becomes a casualty. Humility is not weakness. It is the strength to acknowledge what you don't know and the grace to accept your limitations. Arrogance, by contrast, is the refusal to show vulnerability, to admit fallibility. It masks insecurity with bravado, but underneath lies a fragile ego desperate to protect itself from doubt. When wisdom morphs into arrogance, it also poisons your ability to learn from failure. A wise person sees failure as feedback, a guide to improve and adapt. The arrogant person sees failure as a threat to identity and status, something to deny, blame, or hide. This denial cuts off growth and fosters stagnation. The fear of being wrong becomes stronger than the desire to be right in a meaningful way. Arrogance also warps your relationships. Instead of inspiring respect, it breeds resentment and distance. People sense the lack of genuine openness and start to disengage. Conversations become one-sided, where you talk but do not listen. This dynamic creates an echo chamber, reinforcing your own beliefs and blinding you to new insights. Furthermore, arrogance blinds you to your own blind spots. True wisdom embraces the unknown and seeks out perspectives that challenge assumptions. Arrogance rejects challenge, surrounding itself with agreement and shutting out dissent. This selective hearing creates a dangerous feedback loop where your beliefs grow more rigid and disconnected from reality. The transformation also distorts your sense of responsibility. Wisdom carries the burden of understanding with care and compassion. Arrogance twists it into entitlement, the belief that because you know, others should simply follow. This mindset disrespects the autonomy and intelligence of others and creates a hierarchy where the arrogant see themselves as inherently superior. Another critical danger of this transformation is how it fuels conflict. Wisdom promotes peace through understanding and dialogue. Arrogance escalates tensions through judgment, condescension, and inflexibility. It turns differences into battles and questions into weapons. What might have been a fruitful exchange becomes a power struggle, leaving wounds rather than growth. The arrogance born from wisdom is especially insidious because it often justifies itself with past achievements or credentials. You may point to your experience or knowledge as proof that your position is correct, using authority as a shield against criticism. But wisdom does not rest on laurels. It questions even the most established truths. Arrogance clings to status to defend itself from discomfort. In the process, arrogance erodes the very qualities that define wisdom: curiosity, patience, empathy, and openness. These traits require vulnerability and a willingness to be wrong, things the arrogant find difficult to accept. Without these, wisdom cannot flourish, and what remains is a brittle shell that crumbles under pressure. This transformation also affects your internal dialogue. Where wisdom brings peace through acceptance and understanding, arrogance breeds an internal need to prove oneself constantly. It creates anxiety masked as confidence, a fear of exposure hidden behind a facade of certainty. This internal tension is exhausting and unsustainable. Ironically, the more arrogant you become, the less confident you truly are. Confidence rooted in humility is steady and quiet. Arrogance is loud and defensive. It needs constant affirmation to maintain its fragile balance. This insecurity drives behavior that pushes others away, deepening isolation and misunderstanding. The cycle can be hard to break because arrogance often blinds you to its own existence. You may see yourself as justified, as protecting truth, or as standing firm against ignorance. Yet in doing so, you miss the mark entirely. Wisdom is not about standing still or holding fast. It is about evolving, adapting, and sometimes surrendering your certainty for a broader perspective. This transformation from wisdom to arrogance is also a spiritual danger. It blinds you to the deeper truths of humility and connection that transcend knowledge. It creates separation where there could be unity, judgment where there could be compassion. It replaces the endless quest for understanding with the finality of dogma. To navigate this transformation requires constant vigilance. You must learn to recognize when confidence is tipping into arrogance, when certainty is closing off inquiry, and when knowledge is hardening into pride. This awareness is not easy because arrogance often feels like a natural defense mechanism, a survival strategy in a competitive world. Yet, the cost of ignoring this transformation is high. It damages relationships, stalls growth, and diminishes your ability to lead or inspire. It turns potential into poison and clarity into blindness. The most dangerous arrogance is that which masquerades as wisdom because it lulls you into a false sense of security, hiding the cracks until they become fractures. The journey back from arrogance to wisdom begins with a willingness to be uncomfortable, to admit you might be wrong, to listen more than speak, and to seek understanding rather than victory. It requires a dismantling of ego and a rebuilding of perspective grounded in empathy and curiosity. True wisdom embraces paradox and complexity. It accepts that the world is rarely black and white, and that certainty is often an illusion. It recognizes that every answer raises new questions and that growth is a lifelong process, not a destination. This is the humility that keeps wisdom alive and vibrant. When wisdom transforms into arrogance, you lose this vibrancy. You become rigid, defensive, and closed off. You mistake knowing for being and forget that the heart of wisdom is not accumulation, but transformation. The path forward lies in reclaiming humility and rediscovering the endless dance between knowing and unknowing. Freedom is a word that conjures images of soaring skies, open roads, and boundless possibility. It is something most people desire deeply, yet few truly understand how fragile it is and how easily it can be lost. The loss of freedom often does not come from external chains or visible barriers, but from within, through attachment. Attachment is the subtle force that quietly binds, restricts, and ultimately imprisons the very spirit that longs to be free. It is one of the most insidious dangers because it wears the guise of love, necessity, or comfort, convincing you that what you cling to is essential for your happiness or survival. Yet this very clinging becomes the trap that steals your freedom, turning choice into obligation and opportunity into limitation. Attachment is not inherently negative. It is part of the human condition. We attach to people, ideas, possessions, identities, and routines. These attachments can provide stability, meaning, and connection. But when attachment becomes excessive or unconscious, it shifts from support to shackles. You begin to measure your worth, your security, and your happiness by how tightly you hold on to these things. What once served you now demands you, shaping your actions, thoughts, and emotions in ways that limit your autonomy. The loss of freedom through attachment starts in the mind. Attachment narrows your perspective because you start to see the world through the lens of what you possess or what you fear to lose. Your focus tightens on protecting these attachments, and with that focus, your options shrink. Freedom requires openness and possibility, but attachment breeds fixity and fear. You become a prisoner of what you hold dear, unable to entertain alternatives or embrace change without anxiety. Emotional attachment is particularly powerful because it is intertwined with your sense of identity and security. When you attach deeply to a person, you may begin to feel incomplete or vulnerable without their presence or approval. This creates dependence, where your emotions are no longer your own, but are controlled by the dynamics of the relationship. Your freedom to choose how you feel, respond, or move forward becomes compromised. The same happens with attachments to past experiences or future hopes. Clinging to what was or what might be stops you from living fully in the present moment. Material attachment also plays a subtle yet devastating role in the loss of freedom. Possessions, status, or wealth can become anchors that tie you to routines, expectations, or fears. The more you accumulate, the more you feel you must maintain, protect, and defend. Your choices become dictated by the need to preserve these external markers of success or security. True freedom requires the ability to let go, to live lightly, and to adapt. But attachment to material things breeds anxiety about loss and a compulsion to control. Another layer of attachment is found in beliefs and ideologies. When you become attached to a particular world, view, philosophy, or identity, you risk closing off your mind and heart to other possibilities. This intellectual rigidity restricts freedom of thought and expression. You begin to filter every experience through this fixed lens, rejecting ideas that challenge your beliefs. The freedom to explore, question, and evolve becomes sacrificed at the altar of certainty and tribal loyalty. Attachment also limits freedom by creating an illusion of safety. You convince yourself that holding on tightly is necessary to avoid pain, loss, or chaos. This illusion is seductive because it masks vulnerability with control. But safety gained through attachment is false security. It is a fragile construct that depends on external factors remaining constant. Life, however, is change itself. When change inevitably comes, your attachments can shatter, leaving you more vulnerable than before. The paradox of attachment is that it promises security but delivers captivity. The tighter you hold on, the more you tighten the noose around your own freedom. You become reactive rather than proactive, defensive rather than open, confined rather than expansive. Attachment breeds fear, the fear of losing what you cherish, which becomes a prison cell constructed by your own mind and heart. This loss of freedom manifests in many ways. You may find yourself stuck in unhealthy relationships, unable to leave because the attachment is too strong. You may cling to jobs, roles, or identities that no longer serve you, trapped by the fear of starting over or being judged. Your dreams may wither under the weight of attachments that limit your imagination and courage. The cost is not only external, it is deeply internal, eroding your peace, your joy, and your sense of self. Furthermore, attachment creates invisible chains that restrict your choices. When every decision is weighed against potential loss, you stop making bold moves. Fear of breaking attachments paralyzes action and stifles creativity. Freedom requires risk and the willingness to embrace uncertainty, but attachment breeds hesitation and resistance. It narrows the paths you see and makes you blind to the opportunities waiting beyond your comfort zone. The emotional landscape of attachment is one of tension and contradiction. You may feel grateful for what you have but simultaneously anxious about losing it. You may desire connection but also feel trapped by it. This push and pull creates internal conflict, a tug-of-war between the desire for freedom and the need for security. This conflict drains energy and focus, leaving you exhausted and disoriented. Attachment also impacts your capacity for love and generosity. True love is free. It does not seek to possess or control. But attachment often masquerades as love while demanding ownership and compliance. This distorts relationships and creates unhealthy dynamics where love is conditional, transactional, and suffocating. Freedom lost to attachment in relationships is a quiet tragedy that can erode trust and intimacy over time. The mind's habit of attaching to the known is rooted in survival instincts. Evolutionarily, attachment provided safety and continuity. But in modern life, this instinct often works against you, binding you to outdated beliefs, habits, and fears that no longer serve your growth. Breaking free from attachment requires conscious awareness and the courage to challenge these deep-seated patterns. The process of losing freedom through attachment is gradual, almost imperceptible. It does not happen overnight, but through small compromises and repeated choices to prioritize safety over freedom. Each concession may seem minor, but together they build walls that close in around your spirit. The difficulty lies in recognizing these walls because they are built from things you value and cherish. To regain freedom, the first step is awareness, seeing how attachment operates in your life and the ways it limits you. This awareness is uncomfortable because it forces confrontation with fears and losses. Yet, it is necessary because what you do not see, you cannot change. Awareness opens the door to choice, the ability to decide whether to hold on or let go. Letting go is the paradoxical path to freedom. It does not mean abandoning what you care about, but releasing the need to control or possess it. It means embracing uncertainty and trusting that life can unfold without your grip on it. This is not easy. Attachment is deeply rooted in emotion and habit, but letting go lightens your load and expands your horizon. Freedom regained through releasing attachment is not emptiness but fullness, a fullness born of presence, acceptance, and openness. It is the ability to flow with life rather than fight against it. It is the courage to risk loss for the sake of growth and the wisdom to know that true security comes from within, not from external holdings. Attachment also blinds you to the present moment because it anchors you in the past or future. You dwell on what was or what might be, missing the richness of what is. Freedom is found in presence, being fully here and now without clinging to what has been or what could be. This presence is a gift that attachment often steals, replacing it with anxiety and regret. In relationships, freedom lost through attachment is healed by cultivating trust and respect for autonomy. This means loving without possession, supporting without control, and valuing connection without dependence. Such love honors both freedom and intimacy, allowing both partners to grow and thrive. In your inner world, freedom is restored by practicing detachment, not indifference, but a balanced engagement with life that neither clings nor rejects. Detachment allows you to care deeply while remaining free, to engage fully while maintaining perspective. It is the art of holding loosely rather than grasping tightly. The danger of attachment is that it hides behind noble intentions, love, loyalty, responsibility, making it hard to recognize as a loss of freedom. But when you peel back the layers, you find the core truth. Attachment is a form of bondage that limits your choices, narrows your vision, and suffocates your spirit. Ultimately, freedom lost through attachment is a universal human struggle. It touches every aspect of life: relationships, career, beliefs, possessions, and self-identity. The challenge is to navigate this tension consciously, to learn when to hold on and when to release, and to cultivate a heart that is free even amid the inevitable attachments of life. This journey requires courage because letting go often means facing loneliness, uncertainty, and pain. But it also offers the profound reward of liberation, the ability to live fully, love deeply, and move through life unburdened by invisible chains. Freedom reclaimed is not a destination but a continuous practice, a daily choice to rise above attachment and embrace the vastness of possibility. Attachment, when unexamined, transforms from a source of connection to a source of captivity. Recognizing this transformation is the first step toward reclaiming your freedom and rediscovering the wild, untamed spirit within that yearns to roam free.